So in Philippians 4:4-7, the Apostle Paul gives us some instructions to the church in Philippi. He said, "Rejoice in the Lord always. Again, I will say, rejoice. Let your gentleness be known to everyone. The Lord is near. Do not be anxious about anything, but in everything, by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God. And the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus." Now, when we read this passage, I think many of us have a tendency to think it's saying, be happy about everything. And that makes no sense whatsoever, does it? It doesn't really make sense when you consider Paul's circumstances as he penned those words. He wrote the letter to the church in Philippi from a prison cell. He was uncertain of his future. He was facing the very real probability that he would not be able to finish his mission. And yet there he is, commanding the Philippians to rejoice in the Lord always. Why? How? Well, the answer isn't hidden. It's right there in verse 5. The Lord is near. In her article, Surprised by Joy, Episcopal priest and author Barbara Brown Taylor wrote, "The only condition for joy is the presence of God. Joy happens when God is present and people know it, which means that it can erupt in a depressed economy, in the middle of war, or even in an intensive care waiting room." The presence of God, the nearness of God is the key to joy, to finding joy. We'll come back to that in a minute. Part of the problem is, in our modern English language, we often use joy and happiness interchangeably. We use them as synonyms for one another. We can talk about joy, we can sing about joy. But we can't make ourselves feel joyful. Oh, we can do things that give us pleasure. We can pursue the things that make us happy. But joy is a bit more elusive, a bit more slippery. But yet, if you had to choose one word to describe the theme that runs throughout Advent and Christmas, what would it be? It's joy, right? It seems like you can't turn on the radio with joy this and rejoice that. Don't believe me? Joy to the world, the Lord has come. Let earth receive her King. And then there's joyful, joyful, we adore thee. Or how about the one we're going to sing later? O come, Emmanuel. Rejoice, rejoice, Emmanuel. Shall come to thee, O Israel. Or God rest you, merry gentlemen, the tidings of comfort and joy. Hark the herald angels sing, joyful all the nations. It's the background music in stores and elevators and other public spaces. And it seemed to switch to Christmas carols before Thanksgiving was over. And it's not just the songs, the carols, the hymns. All the Bible stories and passages we read during this time of year reinforce the theme of joy. When the shepherds were visited by the angels, what did the angels tell them? I bring you good news that will cause great joy for all the people. Even Matthew, when he's talking about the slaughter of the innocents, slips in a little joy because the Magi, when they saw that star, they were overjoyed. And on top of the Christmas carols and hymns, the nativity stories, it seems that one of the most common activities for the season is telling stories. Telling stories of family get-togethers of yesteryear, where Uncle Johnny told a joke that was so funny and the timing was so perfect that Jackie almost did a spit take. Or remember that time when Grandma got you those bright yellow socks for Christmas? I loved those socks, by the way. The happy, happy, joy, joy of Christmas season is all around us all the time. And the season seems to come earlier and grow longer and larger every year. It seems like the Halloween decorations are barely down before they're being replaced by Christmas merchandising and advertising. Weeks and weeks with a seemingly unending stream of Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays and joy to the world. We're bombarded with a relentless stream of idealized Norman Rockwell family Christmas scenes. Hallmark doesn't even wait till Thanksgiving to begin their continual stream of feel-good, meet-cute, love will find a way because it's Christmas movies. Even our Advent themes at church contribute to the barrage, if you think about it. Hope, peace, joy, and love. It's relentless. It's pervasive. And Christmas is the happiest time of the year for some people. And maybe it used to be the happiest time of year for you. But not this year. This year, it seems that all Christmas does is to remind us that things aren't the way they used to be. To remind us that this year will not be like other years. The holiday traditions, the foods, the rituals, the locations, these things that used to bring us comfort are now a hollow mockery that reminds us of what used to be. Since Thanksgiving, I don't think a day has gone by that I've not heard someone, and many times multiple someones, talk about how hard this time of year is for them. Especially this year, many of them say. Members of this church, this faith family, people sitting in this room with us today. You see, there's a harsh truth about the Christmas season that we so often overlook. A harsh truth that's lost on so many folks during this time of celebration. Because the simple reality is that not everyone's Christmas is a merry one. There are many of us for whom this season is not a season of joy. It's a season of sadness, perhaps even despair. Pain and loneliness, broken relationships, shattered dreams, and loved ones lost. The constant onslaught of media and the well-meaning companions telling us directly and indirectly that we need to be happy. It's a season of joy. Only seems to make it worse, and the sense of loss weigh more heavily. Oh, most of us will put on a brave face and we'll soldier on. We will try to hold our ground when that unexpected wave of grief threatens to sweep us away. We will endeavor to keep our footing when the emotional baggage and weight we're carrying threatens to squash us flat. And we'll do our best to make this Christmas season as normal as possible, all the while trying our very best to keep from screaming aloud in pain and anguish, crying out to God, "Don't you know how much I'm hurting? Don't you understand our pain?" Or, like the author of Psalm 22 laments, my God, why have you forsaken me? Why are you so far from saving me, so far from my anguished groans?" Brene Brown is a professor, a social worker, a storyteller, and she spent decades studying courage and shame and empathy and vulnerability. And I'd like to share a little excerpt from one of her talks, where she talks about the differences between sympathy and empathy and why that's important. So what is empathy, and why is it very different than sympathy? Empathy fuels connection, sympathy drives disconnection. Brown references a scholar who studied diverse professions and came up with 4 qualities of empathy. Perspective taking, the ability to take the perspective of another person and recognize that perspective as their truth. Staying out of judgment, which is not easy to do when you enjoy it as much as most of us seem to. Recognizing emotion in other people and then communicating that. See, empathy is dealing with people. Brown says she thinks of it as a kind of a sacred space. When someone's in a deep hole and they shout out from the bottom and they say, "I'm stuck, it's dark, and I'm overwhelmed." And we look and we say, "Hey," and we climb down to be with them. And And we say, I know what it's like down here, and you are not alone. That's empathy. Sympathy is looking down from the edge of the hole going, ooh, that looks bad. Would you like a sandwich? Mm-hmm. Empathy is a choice, and it's a vulnerable choice. Because in order to connect with you, I have to connect with something in myself that knows that feeling. And rarely, if ever, does an empathetic response begin with "at least." And we do it all the time. Someone shares something that's incredibly painful and we try to silver lining it. I had a miscarriage. Well, at least you know you can get pregnant. My marriage is falling apart. Well, at least you had a marriage. My wife is dying. Well, at least you had some good years together. One of the things we do in the face of difficult conversations is we try to make things better. If I share something with you that's very difficult, I would rather you say, I don't even know what to say right now. I'm just so glad you told me. Because the truth is, rarely can a response make something better. What makes something better is connection. Pastor Mark Havel wrote this paragraph. So much of the truth about Christmas, which often gets lost in the mix of everything we've done to the most wonderful time of the year, so much of the truth about Christmas is acknowledgement of the fact that life in this world is relentless. And the story of our faith never suggests otherwise. God never suggests otherwise. Pastor Howell writes, a friend of his once said that the Bible itself, the story of our faith in Scripture, reads like some kind of a trauma response narrative when you think about it. See, the secret about Christmas, the true meaning of Christmas, is contained in Matthew 1:23, where the author is quoting Isaiah. Therefore the Lord himself will give you a sign. The young woman is with child and shall bear a son and call him Emmanuel. God is with us. The promise of Christmas is that gentle reminder about the kind of God that we are dealing with, the kind of God that we worship. The promise of Christmas is not about a God who stands up there and out there and far away from what hurts us. A God who looks down at us suffering in our hole and offers us a sandwich or a meaningless platitude. Like that's somehow going to fix it. No, our God isn't like that. Our God doesn't start anything with "at least." See, the real promise of Christmas is a God who knows exactly what we're going through. A God who lived and breathed, who felt joy and sadness, who experienced and felt just exactly what we live and experience and feel as people. A God who wept when his friend Lazarus died. Who, in the depths of despair, cried out to his Father in anguish. Who can empathize with us because he's been there, he's done that, and he's got the scars to prove it. The real promise of Christmas is our God shows up in the middle of whatever mess we find ourselves in, and he sits with us. And he lets us know that we're not in this mess by ourselves. The real promise of Christmas is a God who is sitting with you now, in this worship service, in this day, in the presence of someone who has struggled and suffered, and who is struggling and suffering beside you even now. The real promise of Christmas is, as the Apostle Paul tells us in 2 Corinthians, a God who consoles us in all our afflictions so that we can comfort other people who are in every kind of trouble. We offer the same comfort that we ourselves received in God. The pit of our grief, our troubles may be dark and overwhelming, but our God is not on the edge. He's with us. I know what it's like down there, and you're not alone. In our sadness and our despair, our joy and our happiness, our triumphs and our tragedies, we do not need to endure them alone. The promise of Christmas, the joy that is to be found in Christmas is simply this. is with us, that we are not alone.